The Women and Children's Horizons domestic violence shelter in Kenosha County closed temporarily. The next day, we received many phone calls from those people who were housed in the shelter who are now in some temporary housing in motels. So we've been helping them since early August with food and clothing, school supplies, and working to get them housed as well. I think we're on track to getting about 6 of them housed currently within the next few weeks, hopefully. The biggest challenge with that is always finding an apartment that they can afford and sustain. I want to talk a little bit about homelessness in our community as we see it. And to be very clear, the majority of the people who present to us as homeless are homeless just because they can't find an apartment that they can afford. They have income, they have transportation, they have a job, they just can't find something that they can afford. So that is for us the driver of people who are unhoused at this time. We've also seen an increase in the overall age and a change in gender and family demographics for our homeless participants. In 2022, the average age of somebody who was homeless was 34, and that was predominantly a single male. It has jumped to 45 years of age, and we've seen a vast increase in single females, entire family units, and families with newborns. Senior citizens above the age of 60, that has also increased substantially, with some participants just under the age of 80 years old. And these are all people who are coming to us and are literally homeless, sleeping in their cars, couch surfing, sleeping outside, just it's the gamut of things, but they really have no place permanent to call home. With the post-pandemic rent increases, our seniors right now, it's just a different risk factor for them. They've been living in an apartment for a long time. That rent has increased. Their social security check is not. They have to move. There is nowhere for them to move to that they can afford. So they're being priced out of the apartments they're in, but can't afford to go anyplace else and can't find something they can't afford. Folks who own trailers or manufacture homes also struggling. Lot prices have gone up. Some of our mobile home parks in the area, their lot fees are almost $1,000 a month at this point. So that's really high compared to the 2, 3, 4, 500 that we've seen for maybe the past decade. Center participants overall, the majority of our working age center participants are employed. We're seeing also an increase in retired seniors who have to go back to work to make ends meet. I think I could keep going on and on. I think you see the picture and understand the need for us to continue our partnership with the village really strong. I would love to do it in a contract form where we contract with you to provide services for the village. There's an accountability piece for us when we're contracted to do something. And I would be willing to do some sort of a contractual agreement if that was something that was doable legally and with the village's blessing. And I just really look forward to continuing working hand in hand that we together ensure that we're meeting the needs of our community. The annual benefits and costs to the community, kind of by the numbers here, we provide over $1.1 million in goods and services to village residents annually. And our hard cost to serve those residents is approximately $209,000. And with the purchase of service funding we receive currently, it's a little less than $5 per person for the entire year. So very grateful for the partnership and for the funding. Just want you to see the extent of the need and the cost that it is to do what we're doing. And I'm really happy actually to provide a mid-year update on the needs of the community and the members that we assist. And maybe I'll do that after the elections next year, just to kind of give you an update on what's going on. Is there any questions I can answer at this time? Yes. Just financial. Yep. Yep.
Question.
Yes.
What's the total number of residents of the village of Salem Lakes that you served over the last year?
I believe if in my purchase of services, I think it was about 3,800.
So 300 of our residents, and we're currently around 15,000.
Yes,
I think you have something right around 11% of our total population of the village of Salem Lakes is receiving services at the
yes,
sharing center.
yes. And it might be one time and it might be every month for years on end. It really varies across the board. Yeah. So that 3,800, we call that unduplicated. So no matter how many times they come in a year, we just count them as one unique family. Yeah. So 3,800 individuals.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just thank you for your years of support and for being wonderful to work with, and look forward to just doing great things in the coming years as well.
Great. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay,
If I
8
could
point.
remind members of the board when you're speaking, please make sure you turn on your microphone so those online cannot hear you. Thank you.
8.2 Westosha Senior Center Shared Services Budget Request.
Get this down where my height is. Is that about right?
Yes,
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Sandy Jacoby at the Westosha Senior Community Center. As to my purpose tonight is to describe for you guys the proposed very targeted funding that we're requesting in order to derive a benefit for our community as a whole. On May 15th of this year, a WKCSCC member who is also a volunteer often donated stone tile valued at $7,626.85 from her B2B business at no cost to the Westosha Senior Community Center. Its purpose was to replace broken tiles and shifted floor foundations in the men and women's bathrooms that are 9 by 18 in size. These tiles have been in place where they are now since the 1950s. That's a lot of wear. We arranged for 2 senior citizens with pickup trucks to deliver the 1,865 pounds of tile to the center at no cost. And then we had 5 Central High School football players and their coach unload those tiles at the center itself, so that again we did that at no cost. From 3 contractors, we've received bids to remove the 2 restroom tile floors and install newly donated tiles. For that, we have received bids to, in fact, for $15,000. All the toilets, the stalls, the wash basin cabinets, the air hand dryers, and the metal cabinets must be removed and then all put back in the restrooms after the old broken tiles are removed. The floor prepped and leveled, and then the new tile installed with grout, with sealer and baseboard. Even the air hand dryers will have a 3x3 splash stone tiled area installed for cleanable areas that are now covered by very stained plastic sheets. Each restroom will require a closure for a week to install, and then the other must be closed for a week of work. Bids include estimated materials and labor costs. We are amazed that a member business owner saw the broken, decades-old tile and offered free, absolutely free tile to improve senior services and senior safety. As for our expected outcomes, we gather senior citizens for 15 weekly activities in addition to special monthly events. For those activities, educational groups that require proactive health measures on our part in order to support a durable and efficient building, to include level restroom floors with tiling that is no longer broken to reduce that slip, the trip, and the falls, especially with more rain and snow coming very soon, right, guys? Improving the men and the women's restrooms with new tile flooring will allow much safer use. A clear reason to move forward with this, with optimizing a healthy senior environment, is that the U.S. Center for Disease Control has identified isolation and loneliness as detrimental to senior citizen health, as much so as smoking and obesity. That's an impact. While learning new skills, these seniors also build more neural pathways to reduce the onset of dementia, with exercise activities reducing that dementia by 50%. A very sound reason for having a senior center. Safe personal hygiene space for both the men and the women's bathrooms allows seniors to remain longer at the center activities. Year-round fundraiser events like our Valentine party, our spring fling dinner, Fun in the Sun, art and craft show, and holiday party. These are all fundraisers as well as social events. They bring many Salem Lakes members to the center as families, as well as the seniors. Pushed indoors by wet, cold weather very soon, our fitness, our educational, and our social activities every Monday to Friday will flourish in a much safer environment. As proposed for the shared service funding for senior citizens, the continued support of the Salem Lakes members each year indicates that improving the building environment for seniors is a desired outcome for all our communities in the area, and especially for Salem Lakes. I kept this brief so that I could answer any questions that you guys might have.
Do you know the approximate percentage of Salem residents that,
I do. I did include that in the proposal. Again, membership is not required if they're 60 and older in order to take advantage and utilize the center and its kinds of activities. But so voluntary membership ranges in 2023 at 266 members. Of those, 161 are addresses that are part of Salem Lakes. So that's a pretty strong percentage of senior citizens. We also have increasingly been seeing, classes reaching 20, 25 sometimes of seniors. We've had a recent growth in terms of people being there. We have over somewhere between 20 and 30 for lunch daily at our senior dining program, which we house as well with a partner organization, Kafasi. And so we've seen a lot of increase in growth in those kinds of classes.
So over the last 2 years, we've given you $15,000.
That's correct.
Each year.
Yeah, that's correct. And
How-
and as I said, you've obviously invested in this success of this location.
How much has Bristol given towards your center?
Theirs is a little harder to measure. It is not nearly the amount we are, seeking more. It's been $1,500 a year for about the last 15 years. Okay. But they also provide services. For example, they handle all of our waste and recycle program. They provide that free. In addition to that, they provide free all mulch that we use for all our landscaping and our gardening work, and they deliver it free of charge, which in my experience typically is several $100s per trip. And they've made at least a half a dozen trips this summer already, and we'll be using them more in the fall. So they provide us, for example, burning permit, because we have a 19200 93rd Street. We have a Bristol address. They provide a burning permit and do not charge any fees. So if things like that come up, they've been very supportive on the whole. So I would agree that we would love to see more generosity, but this doesn't seem to be the time period during which that seems to be happening with town boards.
So besides Salem Lakes and Bristol, do you serve any other communities?
Yes, we do. I would say that we have members, again, Salem and Bristol make up the vast bulk of our membership, as I gave you that data before. But I would say that if I just let me real quickly reference here so I get it right. I do have a list of all the different kinds of communities that we often assist with senior activities. Because we're an independent 501c3, we're a nonprofit, independent. We don't belong to the county. We don't belong to the federal government. We literally belong to the towns, our communities, and the senior citizens themselves in terms of how we acquire our funding. We do receive funding from several other kinds of foundations that we apply for. In other words, we really could not ever make improvements if we had to operate on operating funds only. But you mentioned other locations that we find ourselves serving. In addition to Salem Lakes, obviously Trevor, the Silver Lake, Camp Lake, Wilmot, Paddock Lake, Bristol, Brighton, and Paris, Twin Lakes, and even Wheatland. People from, and varying numbers of people coming and going. We really don't run an acid test as to, what is your address, or you can't come in here by any means. We're encouraging senior citizens because we feel that a healthier community is going to be valuable to all of our area. Healthy senior citizens.
And you ask those other municipalities for any support in financial ways?
We have explored that in the past and have not had much success with that. We're certainly willing to try. As I said, we approach a number of foundations and fund capital improvement types of projects, the kinds of things that you guys have supported also. I have to say Salem Lakes has been just literally incredibly helpful in terms of making a better environment at the senior center, honestly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, 8.3 Twin Lakes Senior Center Shared Services Budget Request.
Good evening. My name is Pat Maroka. I'm president of the Twin Lakes Seniors in Twin Lakes, Wisconsin. I think you've been passed out. I had put a couple of things up there all about our club. Our club started over 50 years ago. That's how long it's been going. In January of this last year, we had to find a new home. And we did find a new home. I wanted to keep it in Twin Lakes because that's where it originated. It has been all these years. So we did find a new home at Hope Lutheran Church in Twin Lakes. They've been wonderful to us. And we have they have been really great. They built us cabinets, which we didn't have the money for. But one of their parishioners built us beautiful cabinets so we could put all of our supplies in there so we could leave them there and not have to take them. I've been with this club. This is my 10th year as president. They won't let me go. It's not an easy position to fill. But I will be honest and say that the majority of our seniors that we have are in their mid 70s to 80s. We've even had 98-year-olds that come. Just to give you an example, today was one of our meeting days. We had 74 people we have right now, as of today, we had some new people sign up. We have a lot that pass, so it fluctuates up and down. But right now we have 120 members. And I would say out of them, like I said, the majority of them are in their mid 70s to 80s to 90s. They come from, a lot of them from farming communities, not all of them, but a lot of them. And these seniors by us, they're all on a fixed income. They didn't make the salaries like our husbands did, when we were growing up. So I try to do things for them to keep the costs down. We are a nonprofit as far as that goes. And I'm here tonight to ask for a grant for $2,500 again for our seniors. And the reason I come is because we have seniors not only from the Twin Lakes area, it's gotten much bigger. Maybe when it started 50 years ago, that's what it was. But now we have so many different communities around. And the biggest majority is a third of our seniors come from the Salem Lakes area, and a third of them come from Twin Lakes. We have seniors that and in the different areas, and you were asking about going to the different communities for them. Most of them are like, to give you an example, we have 4 people in Antioch that come, 1 in Bassett, 3 in Bristol. And I don't, I don't think going to their village, there's much money when there's 1 to 3 people. The largest one, like I said, is Salem Lakes and Twin Lakes. Twin Lakes gives us $3,500 a year. And that money we use because we do, if you look on the activities sheet for the year, we take bus trips, we go to shows, we do things. We're just more of a fun organization. And I try to keep the costs down as much as possible. We do charge $1 when they come in, and some of that money goes towards the buses. Our buses now, the majority of them, if you've ever had to rent buses, if we go to, let's say, Milwaukee back to Twin Lakes, our buses are $1,300 to $1,400 right alone just for that. We've gone into Chicago and our buses are $1,800. We've looked around at different bus companies. They're all about the same. So the money we get from Twin Lakes subsidizes our buses. And it helps out tremendously. I add on $10 for every activity that we take a bus. And it goes towards a bus, but you're talking about a couple $100 in comparison to 13. So, we've been very fortunate with Twin Lakes, and also we've gotten a grant for you for $2,500 before, but the grant from you, we do pay a rent of $1,500 a year. And we've been paying that kind of a rent even at our other church for quite a few years. So I'm here tonight to ask for $2,500 again. Some of the other areas that we go into, and I started to, even in Illinois, we have members, but they're like 2 or 1 or 3 from different areas. We have members even from Antioch, Crystal Lake, Hebron, Lake Villa, Richmond, Spring Grove. So I feel like I'm doing something right. This is word of mouth. And that's how people come to us, is they've heard about us and have come into, to a meeting and signed up right away, So when they come in, when they sign up, we charge them $20, and that's for the year. So we do take in some little bits of money, but not enough to really keep us going. So I'm here tonight to ask, like I said, the $2,500 like we had received before. And the money that we would receive from you would be used for our things like our printer ink, paper, and it sounds menial, but I do a lot. As you see, I can print out paper like nothing. So printer ink, office supplies, kitchen supplies, that type of thing is what I'm asking for. Last time we did buy a printer, so thank you for that, along with other things that we had purchased. So I really enjoyed that. I guess that's about it. I do have a list here if you're interested in knowing from the different communities how many people we have, but is there any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
What was one question?
Oh, yeah.
Specifically from the Village of Salem Lakes, how many people did you say that you served? You said you had a list?
Okay, yeah, I have a list. It's 1/3. So I have from Salem Lakes, let's see. Where are we at? Twin Lakes is 33 and Salem Lakes is now 29. So we're getting, pretty close to the same amount. They're our biggest. Otherwise, like I said, other communities, the highest is 11, and that's Kenosha. They come even from Kenosha, they find out about us. But the rest of them are 2 or 3.
So 29 people, it's not a percentage, that's people?
Pardon me?
That's 29 people total served from
Yes.
the, okay,
Yes,
thank you very much.
sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 8.4 Kenosha County Sheriff's Office budget request for third shift officer.
Hi, Tom Gilly from the Kenosha Sheriff's Department, here to talk about a third shift contract car. So as you're aware, currently you don't have a contract car for third shift. There is a district car. It's called Area 15 that basically encompasses the village of Salem Lakes. That you have that on every shift, first, second, and third shift. So I believe that all of you got a chart with the calls for service on third shift and a total over each month. I believe. Does everybody have that? Oh, I don't know if you can read that. So I mean, if you have any questions about it, just let me know. So these calls for service are calls that originated on third shift. These are not calls that maybe kind of came read over from second shift, and that's common. Usually second shift, later in the shift, there's a lot of calls that run into third shift as well. So if you look at the totals, and I'm looking at the total up to this point in the year, it's 746 calls for service. Now that's a small number, but what I want you to focus on, basically it comes out to a little bit over 3 per month or 3 per shift on third shift. It's a small number, but what we need to look at is not the number of calls, but the types of calls. And basically a lot of these calls require more than a minimum of 2 deputies, oftentimes more than 2 deputies. I would say that a lot of times these calls are involved situations where alcohol, drugs, mental health issues are involved, a lot of domestic disturbances, accidents involving injury or road blocking, OWI calls, weapons calls, suicidal subjects, suspicious persons, high-risk traffic stops, pursuits. So these calls require a lot more than just one deputy. Now, we do have obviously other deputies in the county, but these calls that occur in Salem Lakes do require deputies to leave these other areas and come and back them up. And vice versa. A lot of times that contract car, I'm sorry, the non-contract car in that village, they have to leave Salem Lakes to assist in these other areas. Where a contract car is required to stay in the village unless there were emergent situations. And even then, a lot of times we'll backfill. So essentially, it's almost like a mutual aid, but it's something where it's very serious and they might be the closest to it. And they need to go for life, safety, security type situation. A lot of times with these situations, obviously citizens can be more combative. Our deputies on third shift sometimes find themselves fighting with some of these subjects. So that's a whole nother thing as far as officer safety of why we're asking for a third shift contract car. A lot of these calls are just a matter of take the initial call. They're very time consuming. You see a lot of times these police shows, they show officers going to the call and then that's it and they're done and that's all that the viewer sees. However, these calls require a lot more time. It's obtaining statements, collecting evidence, photographing, canvassing, tracking out suspects, arrest and processing, blood draws, medical clearance before going to jail, writing reports. All of this can be very, very time consuming. So I'll give you an example of just some recent calls for service on third shift. So we had a drug overdose where the subject was unconscious, agonal breathing, ultimately taken in custody. We had a fight call at the Wilmot Speedway. We had a TV situation where an intoxicated female broke a window and cut her hand severely. A weapons call where a subject armed himself with a knife and was threatening to harm himself. Another subject who used a razor blade to cut his arms and neck. We had a situation where, well, basically it was a very simple OWI. And then we had a pursuit with a motorcycle. So a whole gamut of different types of calls, but this is just not something that one deputy can handle. So that's where we're asking for. You can see kind of the breakdown of as far as the different areas. And I know, if you look at the numbers, it doesn't look like a lot, but these calls do take a lot of time. And it can take a lot of the calls adjacent to Area 15. Any questions at all?
Are other surrounding communities, are you also asking for, do they have third shift?
Summers is the other, so we contract with the 4 villages. So Summers does have a third shift deputy. Salem Lakes is the second busiest district, village that we contract with. So I would like to see other villages also add a third shift, but that will come down the road, hopefully. I can tell you an amount if you're looking for it as well, as far as how much it would cost. I don't know if you want to know that at this time. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to number 9, Public Works, discussion and possible action on the following items. 9.1, approval of items to be sent to Wisconsin surplus online auction as presented.
Good evening, Board. You were given a list of surplus equipment vehicles that we have in the village. I'm going to pass this off to Nate, who has much more experience with them because he's obviously been here a little bit longer than I have. So I will pass that off to him to go through the list.
All right, I'm just gonna start at the top. If you guys wanna slow me down, I'll give you an example of why we're looking to get rid of it. If you wanna stop me, just stop me and ask any questions. First one are 3 John Deere riding tractor mowers. These are just garden tractors and we've upgraded to 0 turns since then, and these just kind of sit around because they're out of date and not really used for, or good use for us. 2000 S10 pickup truck. It used to be our dog truck. It's in really rough shape. It's rusted, falling apart. And since we got rid of dogs now, we have no use for that either. The Silver Lake Zamboni. That thing takes up space. I don't have any other reason that we have no use for it whatsoever, other than moving things around it.
What happened to the 2 ice skating rinks? One out at Smallfeld Park and one out in Hooker Lake area.
We have not done the ice skating rinks in probably the last 5 years or better.
Why?
And either way, that Zamboni was way too big for it. Like, it's a full size Zamboni for like a hockey rink.
Right.
And these were small, like smaller in this building, so. Good there?
Yep.
Okay. The 99 Chevy 1-ton dump truck with a plow, that was the patch truck and that was just replaced with the 1-ton that we just bought. The old case skid steer, also just replaced it with the track machine a couple months ago. Blue F-250 with a V-box and a salter and a V-plow. That one was replaced, I think 2 years ago, and this was kind of kept around for a backup truck. And since then, we've got another plow truck. The 1-ton has a plow. We have a salter on the 1-ton. We bought another V-box, so this one, kind of the old stock, ready to get rid of that one. The old bale shredder, that one has not been used since I started here. It's been over in the old shop and has had no use since I've been here. And I mean, straw mats work just as well. 2009 Ferris 0 turn. That one's a 48-inch 0 turn, I believe it is. It's real small. For the uses that we have 4 72 inchers, and those are going to do much better. The 1979 Silver Lake flatbed truck. This used to have a tank on it, and since then we took the tank off, repurposed that and put it into one of our dump trucks so we can use it to fill the jetter truck. And this truck's 45 years old and manual split shift. It's not going to get any use. The blue patrol boat, that was another one that has just been kind of pushed out of the way in the last 7 years I've worked here. It's too small for us to use it for buoys or anything like that. It's only 14.5 feet, I believe. It hasn't ran in 7 years or better. I think that's another good one to go.
Is that the one at the fire department now?
No, it's over in the old highway shop, in the back of the highway shop.
That's not the one that we use just
No.
a bunch of work to.
No, this was,
The old patrol boat.
yeah.
Well, it was a Silver Lake patrol boat that we just put a whole bunch of money into at the fire department.
Mm,
So I had two boats then.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
this is a totally different boat.
All right. I was gonna say, we just stuck a whole bunch of money in a new cylinder.
I hope it's not that one. The 1987 Brush Bandit chipper, we have a 2009 Vermeer chipper that's just much more user friendly, much more safety oriented. Two old treatment plant generators, those were both upgraded in the treatment plant upgrades, and these were removed with the intent to sell. So those can go as well. The 2005 Brown Ford Explorer, you got anything about that one?
So the Brown Explorer, we were going to try to keep it, but it has since been found that it is well beyond its life with repairs that are going to be need to made. The other day, one of the girls from the office was driving it and it started smoking from the rear end. So I think it's either a bearing or something within the rear end. So we're looking to send that one down the road with looking at purchasing a new one for the administrative staff.
So does all this equipment have asset tags on it?
No,
Does most of it have asset tags on it?
no.
The reason I'm asking is because for years now, since I've been on the board, every time we replace one of these, we have been asking to see which vehicle or piece of equipment we're replacing. And you mentioned earlier that this thing has been around for a while, one of those items. When we get rid of this stuff, or we buy a replacement for this stuff, like the jetter, we were told that the old one was too expensive to maintain anymore. So we spent $900,000 on a new one, yet we still got the old one.
So the jetter we ended up keeping because the highway uses that one for culverts. But it has a rusted out tank that we have since removed and have patched the piping back together in order to use it. It is also available if the new one does have an issue, then the sewer plant still does have something in case of an emergency. That is why that is why that one is still here, to my knowledge.
So I'd really appreciate getting asset tags put on all this new stuff we're buying, so we can better track it. So that when we're removing something, we can see the asset number being removed from our spreadsheets and whatnot.
Message received. I will make that happen.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the items listed be sent to Wisconsin Surplus Online Auction.
I'll second.
Okay, the first by trustee Hopkins, second by trustee Gant. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Welcome. 9.2 payment request number 4 from Always Contractors in the amount of $324,592.95 for 2024 streets and utilities improvements program.
I'll second.
All right,
Second.
so we have a first by trustee Faber and a second by trustee Hopkins. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 9.3, request to start the process of vacating the alley between tax parcels 704-120-321-0825 and 704-120-321-0890 28503 117th Street, Belmar subdivision.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Hopkins in favor. Discussion?
Is this why that fence hasn't been put up in that one strip?
That I'm not sure, but it is adjacent to the section that we already vacated.
Right.
So that could very well be why there's not a fence there, but I am not 100% on that.
Okay.
One point of clarification, just so you're all aware, you're just simply beginning the process. So staff and legal counsel will have to review what has been submitted. Typically, under the statute, there's two ways to vacate a road or an alley. One is commenced by the petition of the governing body itself, or the alternate way is the petition by all the abutting landowners. And there's some other caveats in the statute, so we'll review that with the staff. You're just motioning to kick off the process, that's all.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 9.4, review of streetlight policy.
So attached to this summary is our current streetlight policy that was adopted on August 14th of 2006. I would request that you please review this policy and recommend any changes that you would like for the staff to make. We have received at least 2 requests recently, and I would like to make sure that there is a consensus on how these requests should be treated. So I would recommend that we table this, review the ordinance as we have now, and we can, with your directive, move forward from there.
So you included a copy of the geometric design of highways and streets dated 2004. Is that the most current?
So unfortunately, Brad is not here this evening, so I don't have a lot of background on streetlights and neither does Kevin. So if it's okay, could we bring this back at your next meeting? Could we table it and bring it back at the next meeting? Unless you would like specific questions that we could then bring back. I don't think I can give this any justice. It's not my specialty. Sorry.
I'd make a motion to table.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Who had the second?
The one thing that has to change is everything says the town of Salem.
Yeah.
But it does say that it's amended periodically by the state statute. It's already in here that it's amended, so.
Okay, so we had a first by trustee Hopkins and a second by trustee Barheit to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 9.5, purchase of Mercury 30 HP motor for the village's pontoon boat from Liberty Marine Center in the amount of $6,148.
So the pontoon boat that we have been using for buoys is with the attached pictures, that I attached pictures to it so you can see what rough shape the pontoon boat was in. Especially for doing buoys with you guys on the board requesting us to move forward with those. We went ahead and redid the whole boat, put a whole new deck on it, put all new safety features, put a new captain's chair in it to make it easier to drive it. And we have a 1970-ish 2-stroke motor on there now, 25 horse. So we're looking to upgrade the whole boat, which will now be stored inside with the extra room we have from surplus. And the new 30 horse motor will have an extended tiller handle, so it'll be easier to operate. And it will also have the correct prop on it, so it will be much easier for us to do buoys and such.
Was that the old Zamboni motor that was on there? But not Zamboni, the Zodiac motor?
Orange, yeah, rescue.
Well, we did have an extra motor from the Zodiac. Don't we still have that around?
I don't know.
That was a 30 horse, I thought too.
That I have no idea because I have not seen that.
I looked upstairs today, I didn't see it. So.
I'd make a motion to approve the 30 horse motor from Liberty Marine Center in the amount of $6,148.
I'll second that.
Okay. First by Hopkins, second by Faber. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed.
Anyone opposed? Pete? Okay. Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you.
9.6, request to contract with Clean Cut Tree Service for $11,800 to grind and dispose of tree debris and yard waste from the village of Salem Lakes yard waste drop-off site.
So last year we had used Clean Cut in order to tub grind everything and then haul it away. This year I have amended the RFP a little bit and requested them to double grind it instead of hauling it away so that we can use the chips for the disc golf and our other walking trails within town So then we don't have to pay for that. So we are using the resources in which we have in order, so they will absolutely tub grind it on scene, double grind it for us and pile it up, so then we can use it in order for our benefit.
Thank you. So I have a first by trustee Gant and a second by trustee Hopkins. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Anyone opposed? And Bill abstains, so 6-0-1. Motion carries. Number 10, Parks, discussion and possible action on the following. 10.1, purchase of a Kawasaki Mule Pro UTV from Nielsen Enterprises in the amount of $15,433.72 for Parks and Trails maintenance. This will be funded with 2024 budgeted money for Parks Development.
So with this, the current and future walking trails that we already have, I think we have just about 5 miles worth. And on some of these, we've already dealt with cleaning up trees that are 2 miles back. And that's kind of a pain and a lot to ask for one of our employees to be carrying saws through the woods 2 miles, whether it's wet, muddy. Trees normally fall down when it rains and storms. So it's usually wet and muddy, walking all the way back there. And I think that we can get a lot of use out of this for not only maintaining the trails that we're having, or that we already have, the trails that we're gonna be making. On top of that, just working the parks in general. We have garbage cans that are way out into the parks that get filled up and get heavy to carry out. We have, let's see, like I said, we also have, the walking trails with trees falling down. We have doing mulch and all that around all the trees in the parks, and we could use it for a lot of things. So I'm recommending that we go with the Kawasaki Mule. It is the highest rated one from what I've seen, and it is also the cheapest.
Can you tell me what some of these accessories are for 20?
The accessories that come with it would be a 3,500 pound winch, a windshield, a roof, and half doors.
What was that last item?
Half doors. Just the half doors that come up a little
Okay.
bit. Keep
It-
brush out from it.
Is this a 4x4 unit?
Yep.
This is a work unit, I understand, rather than a recreation type.
Will we have this branded with the village logo and?
Yeah.
And then that's it.
So
And it
I
is
would
that type.
say, I think this is great. Sounds like it was budgeted. The only problem I have is that we're not getting 3 bids.
There are 3 bids in
the
there.
portal.
There are 3 bids. in
There's
there?
5 different machines from 3 different vendors. There's John Deere Gators, Polaris Rangers. Kawasaki was kind of a tough one because there's only very, very few Kawasaki dealers, and actually to get a machine was difficult, like to find one that was built and ready. But yeah, there's 3 different vendors and 5 different machine quotes.
Sorry that I missed that in there. So I guess at the end of the day, you said the $15,000 one was the cheapest. It was cheaper than the John Deere.
Much cheaper,
Yeah.
yes.
John Deere's like 20. It's all listed on our portal there.
I missed that. Okay, thank you.
And this is a 2024. There was a 2025 I talked to
This-
Kevin about, but it's more of the recreation type rather than a work.
Also with the 2024, we get an $800 rebate. So that helped drop the cost down even more.
I'll make a motion to approve the Kawasaki Mule from Nielsen Enterprise in the amount of $15,433.72.
I'll second it.
Okay, so first by Hopkins, second by Faber.
I have a question. Is this being used on a park fund that we got developers? From the developers
From the disc golf.
yeah, but it's coming out of the park fund that was set from the developers, correct? Is that not a budgeted item that we do?
I believe it's coming out of park impact fees out of the parks budget. And the Parks Commission did review this, so
Parks budget, how's the park get a budget?
the parks has impact fees.
Yes, that's what I'm talking. That's not a budget.
So the impact fees have to be used for the purposes of parks. And so that would be monies that could be allocated and used for the parks and only for the parks. And so it's like a budget. They have a dollar amount and they can only spend what they have in that dollar amount unless the board authorizes more. This is coming out of the excess funds that was not used for the disc golf. And this will be used primarily on the disc golf trail at Community Park, as well as the other trails throughout the
So
community.
it came out of that one budget.
It came out of,
Parks Fund.
came out of the Parks Fund,
Do
correct?
we have a legal opinion what we could use it for? Madam Chairman, the problem here is I was around when this budget, the development fees were brought in, and there's only certain things you can use that for. That's why the budget was so high, or not, that's why the fund is so high. It's for park acquisitions, for new parks, not
Apologize.
existing.
Again, this is, Brad's not here. He's messaging me right now, so he's correcting my statement. It is budgeted through taxes, not impact fees. So this is coming out of our other funds, not the park impact dollars. So I apologize. He's correcting
so
me.
it's not on
Watching
that
online, he
fund
just
then.
couldn't be here in person.
So it goes, okay, because that one that
Thank you.
we've been spending money out of, there's specific items.
You're correct. You're
that
correct.
it's
I'm,
very explicit on what you can and cannot use it for.
my apologies.
All right,
Uh,
that's what I was.
Brad,
asking.
Brad really apologizes, and I'm doing the best we're doing the best we can to cover his items
I
that he was
understand.
going to help with.
I just don't want to get in trouble down the road spending.
You are
money the wrong
correct.
way.
Thank you, Brad, for watching.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Do we have any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Number 11, planning and zoning, discussion and possible action on the following.
Thank you.
Elep-
Board.
Thank you. 11.1, request from Stonehaven Enterprises LLC, 4371 108th Street, Franksville, Wisconsin, 53126-9102, owner Neil Dahl, 4371 108th Street, Franklin, Wisconsin, 53126, agent, for a conditional use permit to allow auto truck body and engine repair in the M1 Limited Manufacturing District on tax parcel 704-120-084-2151, which is 1000 Lotus Drive.
Hi,
And-
Andy from planning. It just was going to present, and the petitioner is here too in case he wanted to present as earlier or if he had any questions. But it is a conditional use permit for the auto truck body and engine repair in the M1 district. It did go before the plan commission. There was no questions or comments, and it was approved unanimously 8-0. We do have in the packet the list of conditions and the items that were submitted to meet the village ordinance.
Andy, I got a question for you here. This picture that we're seeing does not include this newer building to the south of this lot 2. How is all this impacting what they're asking for here? For example, is it this southern portion of lot 2 that they're asking for this engine repair?
Bill, which one, what page are you
Okay,
referencing on
I
the
am on
packet?
page 5 of our handout. It shows the drawing, if you will, with the lot number. Lotus Drive to the north, Cogswell to the east.
It's an overview.
Okay, so, yeah, so to keep in mind, this is couple months ago or a month ago, there was the other property that's owned by the same property owner, which is the building to the south
Okay.
that did apply for the same conditional use permit and was approved. This is for the 1000 and the drawing for this, the building.
So the newer one is kind of elevated.
Yeah, so
Okay,
this property here is the
Yeah.
one, yeah.
So the one to the south is elevated.
You're
And
talking about
this one
this,
is going to be the north to the north of the elevated property, correct?
There's a brand new one on the south side they're just building now.
That's the one Andy's talking about.
Right.
Right.
You're putting it in that existing U-shaped structure. Okay.
Is that gonna have a privacy fence around it like we made the last
You
guy?
can't put a privacy fence around it. You cannot put a privacy fence around the south side of that. Because it's got a berm right next to it with a brick wall, if I'm not mistaken. So everything is gonna be inside the building.
Yeah, and you'll see that's why the conditional use is a little bit
Right.
light on some things because of the requirements that they have that wouldn't allow those type of activities to occur outdoor.
Right. And it was unanimous at the plan commission, right? Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for parcel 70-120-084-2151 1,000 Lotus Drive.
Second that motion.
Okay, so first by Hopkins, second by Young. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 11.2, request from BJS of Salem LLC, 9251 Antioch Road, Salem, Wisconsin, 53168, owner Steve Skutnick, agent, for a conditional use permit amendment to add pickleball courts and remove volleyball court in the B3 Highway Business District on tax parcel 704-120-143-0600, 9251 Antioch Road.
So this item went before the plan commission, was passed unanimously. Now with that, just wanted to draw to your attention is the application had indicated that they were looking to do this just 2 days a week. But then in discussions, it just seemed appropriate to not put a limitation because there really wasn't a concern of the use. And so that was removed. And so the actual conditional use that will be signed now does not indicate that there's a limit on which days it is so that it can be done every day or every night of the week.
And the plan commission again approved that 8-0. That was.
They did.
unanimous vote. Billy, are you gonna, I'll second
Yes.
this, you,
Yes,
I'll second.
You have to make the motion.
I make the motion, we approve.
They've already built these in place, these incorrect? These already been placed.
The pickleball courts are currently in place, correct?
All right, so we have a first by trustee Barheit and a second by trustee Faber. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 11.3, discussion regarding property code enforcement and maintenance procedures to follow up on the presentation given during the August board meeting. This was a request from trustee Polly, so I'm going to let you speak to this.
Thank you very much, Madam President. What I wanted to kind of go over is that there has been a number of complaints brought to my attention regarding our property maintenance complaint process and how it flows through. And we have the ability to change policies, so I have some suggestions for us to consider as a board and potentially invoke policy changes for whoever's doing code enforcement moving forward. So, and where does this come from? In one particular case, there was a case where a person had tall grass. It was called on by a neighbor. The code enforcement officer reported to the scene and went beyond the grass cutting and created a scenario that the homeowner didn't have the capacity to deal with. And that particular building was not on the greatest path. So it had a good ending. There's no need to go into that specifically, but it seems like some alterations that have been common denominator in complaints to me are as follows. People are unaware, even though our forms say this, so I got some alterations here, that their complaint name is FOIA-able, in the event that the person they're complaining against or whomever would like to know who filed the complaint. We have the language on there, however, just that we add it highlighted in yellow and ask staff to point it out, because a number of people have complained they didn't know that, though they signed that form and it says it on the form. So there's some kind of disconnect going on there. So just a little curtailing or changing to help make that really apparent to the people. Hey, do you sure you want to sign this? Because they're going to be able to figure out who you are by a FOIA request. So the second one is item is really kind of the bigger one is what is it that we want code enforcement staff to actually do? Do we want them to go out there if the complaint is unregistered car or tall grass, and do we want them to go everything that they can see from the parkway? There's been a number of cases that have really blown up, for lack of a better term, and then those people are agitated and they go complain on a half a dozen other people, and I don't know that that's really what we're out to do with our maintenance codes. I think we give people the opportunity to complain, and if we go out on the complaint, I think that would solve a lot of this and put us in kind of the sweet spot. So that's something that I guess I'd like to also discuss. So the third item, who can file a complaint? There's potentially a complaint that came through. I don't have the complete details, but that it was a weaponized complaint system, and where the person was complained on by their competitor for no other reason than they were a competitor to give them a hard time. So I think it would behoove us to give some consideration to only village residents and owners of property within the village to be able to file a complaint. So in other words, you can't have somebody from Illinois come up here and go, I don't like how that yard looks or whatever, and then sign the complaint, or we wouldn't accept it. Maybe that's a good one, maybe that's a bad one, but another thought that I had. Also, there's no way to know how many complaints we have. When I've asked, it doesn't seem to be that there's specifically any kind of a clearinghouse location, what we have in process, how many extensions they've received, and then as well as has it been closed. So something that the board members could receive or look at to see, how many complaints came in this month. And that report having some kind of information on it that would be helpful to us to know that as well, because who do they call? People call when they're upset about their filing against them. They call board members generally first, or email board members. So it'd be nice to just have a heads up. The village board also should agree on minor items that don't require the site enforcement or code enforcement officer to go to the scene. For example, we'll just use tall grass and unregistered vehicles. We could save time, effort, and money to send the code enforcement officer to actually just write a letter and send that out. And if they don't get response, then instigate a site visit. So it's, I don't want to go into too much of what's gone down like in the last 4 to 6 weeks here, but and a bit beyond, but ultimately I wouldn't be bringing this up if I wasn't getting a lot of flack from residents that us taking a single complaint and then turning it into something that wasn't complained about might not be the right way to go. So with that, let's have some discussion, see where we land.
I think we should probably have like a committee look into this with some staff and some board members.
I don't know that we really need to go that far.
Well, we need to rewrite it.
We sure, but we can make some alterations this evening potentially on policy that can help get us in the right direction. I'd hate to see it tabled or.
Do that on meeting.
We have the ability to do all these things tonight if we want to.
I'm not gonna jump in that quick either. I mean, Billy has a point. And I wouldn't say it's so quick, just to pick up a rug and sweep it underneath like you seem to be presenting it.
He's got some points
I
there.
also don't necessarily want our enforcement officer, for one, he doesn't go on property unless he's escorted on by the property owner, or it's a citation. Am I correct on that?
He's not supposed to, correct?
But that's my question.
Takes up photos from the road. He does not go onto the property to take photos. He will sometimes go knock on the door and just let them know that he's there to take photos and that we've received a complaint, that he does not ever serve the complaint in person. He serves that through the mail, but
Yeah.
the pictures are taken from the road.
And you said something about cost earlier, Pete. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, sure. Instead of sending the out for something that'd be like these would be for minor items that can be simply brought to the attention of the property owner. And in many cases, I believe property owners maybe could be landlords. So they're gonna receive the letter and be able to deal with their tenants over what it is they should be doing. So instead of sending our code enforcement officer out to respond to a tall grass complaint, they could just write a letter saying, please take care of this and get back to us that you have, and we can go look at it and close it out. So saving a trip. So that's what I was kind of thinking along those lines.
I want whoever that person is, whether it's gonna be our existing code enforcement person or someone new coming in there, to be very careful, because we went down this road except in a different department. And that department was the fire prevention and inspection.
Mhm.
The property owner was given a clean bill of health from the old inspector. New inspector comes in and all of a sudden they're ready to shut them down. And they kept leaning back on the old inspector. Okay, nothing in writing. Except to say, John Smith a year ago said everything was good, now everything is bad. Okay?
Okay, I'm trying to follow on how this would go with my suggestion.
Because the enforcement officer, if he goes out for tall grass, but he sees unregistered vehicles,
Mhm.
should he or should he not write those on there as well? Yes or no?
So I could give a little bit more than yes or no, and I'd like that opportunity. So he should not, if that's not on not what the complainant wrote. And that's where I'm coming from with here. But what should he do that if something's life, health, or safety? Yes, I think those kinds of items he or she should have the ability to add such. But if it comes to something else that somebody hasn't complained about, how should he handle that would be the other question I'd like to be asked. So I'll assume I was. And how he should handle it would be that he would have the conversation with the people, whether that's the landlord, however that would work. And say, hey, they didn't complain about this, but these items, are not within specification, and you could receive additional complaints. In my write-up, I actually add, there is no limitation on the number of items a complainant can list or a number of times a person can file a complaint on the same property. Same as before, no change. That's how we are right now. And so the complainant would have opportunity to write again if they said, you know what, I also don't like those cars. But for us to go and automatically go for things that aren't written, it's been causing a lot of issues. And trying to kind of just move forward through this. So it might seem like I'm just trying to sweep this through, but there's another little bit of backstory there too. I don't know if you're.
Well, the sweeping under was to Billy's point where he wanted to get a committee going, and your response was, well, we can do this tonight. I don't think we can do it tonight. That's my point on sweeping under the rugs.
Well, actually,
Second
no,
of
we
all,
set
you said
policy.
there were other issues coming up as a result, and that goes back to my analogy earlier with the fire inspector.
Mhm.
All right, so the previous inspector found no wrongdoing. You get a new fire inspector come in, guy purchases the property, all of a sudden he goes over and now he's being shut down because he's got not only one, but two exhaust fume hoods that aren't up to code, and you got a number of other things.
Yeah,
Because
this
it was
is,
never addressed. So at what point do we address things and only go by what the complaint is versus what they also see?
so I answered your question with life, health, or safety would be at the discretion of the responding complaint person from from the village, a village designee would have the ability, if they see something life, health, or safety, that they could add it to the list.
So what's an unregistered vehicle? That's in our ordinance.
Sure, but is that life, health, or safety?
You tell me if it's up
Well,
against
I
the
mean,
side of a building,
If,
is that a fire hazard?
if you have an unfinished 1947 Chevy pickup truck in a garage, is that a fire hazard?
It's in the garage, so that's not out of the ordinance.
But it's inside of a wooden box. I'm just saying, like, you're talking about, a vehicle being a hazard.
Violation of the ordinance.
Okay, so it's separate. So I answered life, health, or safety.
Okay.
So, and you have brought up a vehicle example.
Yep.
Sitting outside or inside. It's
Inside is
just-
not in violation of the ordinance.
understood.
Outside it
Pete,
is.
just as people have came to you lately, they came to me as well. We
Thank
know of a couple businesses that have left the village because of the harassment from the code enforcement officer.
Which companies
So
have what?
I'm not talking to you right now. Okay, we'll talk later.
No. we're gonna
So-
talk
We need to be
clarification.
respectful, please,
am
or I will
respectful.
end this conversation now.
So Pete, I agree with you that there should be something where we could go, you know, if the complaint is grass, don't just walk up to the property, start writing citations and, you know, if it is life safety, then
Absolutely.
bring it to a point, okay? But I think this has gone a little bit too far lately and that's where I stand. There should be something in place where it doesn't get out of hand like it has been.
Okay, Madam President, question.
Mhm.
So it's brought before the board that businesses have left. I'd like to get a clarification from the trustee on what businesses per
I
se.
think that that does not have anything to do with this agenda item, so we're not going to entertain that.
Okay, well,
My thoughts on this, Pete, as
Whatever you
far
please,
as
Bill.
for your first item on the complaint form, I agree with you. I think that we could highlight in yellow that it is subject to a FOIA request. I think that is a great idea. The second item to respond only to, and this is only my opinion, to respond only to the complaint listed. I think that that is great. If they do happen to see life safety, I don't have a problem with them writing up that, but I do not think that we should be writing a whole laundry list of everything that they see wrong. I think that our job is to help our public and to help educate them. And those would be a conversation to be had, as you said, that here's other things that could be wrong. You should maybe work on cleaning that up because that could be enforceable. I think that would be a respectful place to come from as our village who has been through a lot the last couple of years, and I'm not interested in going back to where we came from. As far as the third item, who can file a complaint, again, my opinion, I think that only village residents and property owners within our village should be able to do that. I don't think that it is fair that someone from outside of our area should be able to come here and complain on somebody, because if I didn't like somebody in Bristol, I could go over there and complain about their property or vice versa. And I don't think that that is something that should be allowed personally. As far as the monthly report, I did talk to staff on that and gave them some ideas on what could be given in a general sense. And if we wanted more information, we could certainly sit down and request that. Fifth items, the only thing that I have to say about sending only a letter about say tall grass is, as it was brought to my attention, tall grass is a opinion of someone or unregistered vehicles. And again, without doing at least a drive-by, how can you say that that grass is really tall or that they really do have an unregistered vehicle? So he kind of does have to verify that that complaint does exist. But do I think that getting out and citing for 20 things should be allowed? I do not, unless it is life safety, and maybe we need to discuss what life safety is. And that is my opinion.
What do you think about on our complaint form, if we put like a checklist on it of say vehicles or life safety or whatever, put a checklist on there, and if you want to complain about, you check this, okay? And go on from there. I mean,
I think
we're
that could
opening up
get-
the whole.
I
piece
think
of
that could
property.
get to be pages long. And I think that this is a bigger discussion to be had with staff and Ramsey, I guess I'm gonna look to some direction for you on how to proceed with this, because I want to make sure that we do this correctly and that we're covering all of our bases.
Right, I think you would proceed to have staff and legal counsel review some of the points that you feel are, that the board feels warrant some consideration. Things have to be distilled into something that is, written and further reviewed by you, not off the cuff tonight. And the reason for that is zoning is one of the most critical police powers that the village board has. Your zoning codes, your building codes are the law of the land, so to speak, in this village. And if there's violations of that, there has to be teeth to enforce that. And you can make a policy choice, for instance, to pull back all your zoning codes and all your building codes and let it be a complete free-for-all. Nobody has done that since 1920. Every municipality in this state has zoning and has a way to enforce it. There is no one size fits all in terms of how enforcement is handled. Generally speaking, it should be practical, should be obviously consistent. Don't, keep tinkering with it every single day. Doesn't mean you don't tinker with it now and again. Try to make improvements. And some of these things are improvement, like highlighting in yellow the form that says you as a citizen who are complaining, your name might be subject to an open records law. Most people aren't familiar with that. It's very counterintuitive. Your form already says that, but if you want to throw some yellow highlight on there to make it even a stronger point, that's a wonderful idea and that's a good policy decision. But you don't want to do things ad hoc on the moment. It does require a little bit of review. The fundamental legal issue in zoning enforcement is always due process. And so that's one reason you're not going to tinker and change with it every other month or so or every year or so. You want to, if things are generally working and they've been working for several years, I mean, people will always bicker that I didn't like this was weaponized against me, so forth and so on. Those complaints go on everywhere in the state every single day. But if the system is generally working, you don't do massive overhauls. But we can certainly, staff and legal counsel can look at some of these ideas.
And I don't believe that we have written policy on what our procedure is, right, for property
Yeah, some
maintenance.
communities have something written out like a policy.
Yeah.
Others might have it in their code. Others, their policy is unwritten, but it's consistently applied every day. And so it doesn't absolutely have to be in a written policy,
Mhm.
but some do it that way.
Yeah, I would like to do it that way. And I think that, spell it out. If the letter goes out, they have this many days, then after that, here's the next thing that happens. And then that is also, public record. So if anybody wants to get a clear understanding of what the rules are and the process, then they would be able to see that. So,
I just want a couple clarifications. So it sounds like a lot of people would like to go to some kind of a committee, but we do have the legal authority to set policy changes tonight when it comes to, or do we not?
Yeah, you have the authority to make policy changes this evening. Let me look at the agenda item. Yeah, I think though, what you really ought to, you can do it by committee. I don't think tonight you would adopt changes to your policy. I think you would instruct staff to consider some of these policy changes and then bring them back so you have it actually before you. And as Madam President pointed out, in a written policy form so that it's in front of you and that's what you can vote on or further tinker with.
Sure.
From a policy perspective. Or yes, you can route the whole thing into a committee to look at. The committee's job would be to explore how has it been working? What could we do? Look at what other municipalities do, that kind of thing.
The only other question that I had related to the subject is it had been brought up that if we don't list everything that we see, that maybe there's liability on the village's part. Is that something that you can answer or a little bit difficult to throw an answer to?
Are you
In other
referring?
words, a code enforcement officer does what I'm asking, just says goes out for tall grass, ignores non-life health and safety, but also things that are against our ordinance, and that would we be liable?
Can't claim to have done a multi-municipality survey of how they all do it, but I think that some municipalities do have a system where they're only going out to take a look at what has been reported as being a violation and nothing else unless it rises to the level of emergency. Can there be liability in lawsuits? Yes, there can always be liability in lawsuits, whether they've looked at something that's emergency or if your policy was just more open than if they go for one violation and they see others and they turn and look away and don't report those or cite them as a violation, there can still be liability. I mean, you can never stop lawsuits.
You're right. Thank you. So basically, yeah, there's always liability, and even in tonight in our meeting, right? But ultimately, that's not a concern to not look at to not list the items.
You're damned if
The
you
legal
do,
issue,
damned
the legal issue would be really an issue of due process. And so if complaints are coming in of tall grass and the code enforcement officer goes out there and sees tall grass and also sees that it's a drug house with lots of other stuff going on, and they want to cite for all the other stuff, as long as they've given notice, whether it's through a nice little letter, hey, I noticed you're running a drug house, please stop, or it's an actual citation as the first step, whatever that first step is, as long as it's fair and transparent, there's no legal issue in terms of the fact that they went out for one issue, found 12 other issues. That's why some communities, if they go out there, they're okay with them looking at the 12 other issues, because they're zoning and building code enforcement. They want to strive to achieve a certain value or virtue with their zoning and building codes.
Thank you.
But if they go to another residence and they see a similar situation, but they write one up and not the other one, then that's gonna cause problems, obviously.
Well, it will, and that's why the zoning enforcement should always be even-handed. And as long as it's being even-handed, they go out to look at tall grass at two homes, and they know that both homes are drug homes or have other violations going on, and they cite them equally, no problem.
We've had, at one time when we were a town, we tried to be proactive in cleaning things up, and that caused an awful lot of problems. I think some of the things we're running into now are come to the forefront, but I can remember a person that had a tremendous amount of cats living underneath their house, and another one that didn't have indoor bathroom facilities, but very difficult, took a long time to clean those up. Do we actually have non-residents filing complaints?
That's what's been reported.
It has been. Well, the reason we went to a signed document is because it stopped a lot of bickering between neighbors. They were reluctant to sign it. I do think that, and now that we're a village, we can do things differently with our grass, and we do have an ordinance that says, I believe, over 6 inches is, should be cut. And so therefore, I think that the ordinance enforcer should really take a look at that to make sure that he's in that neighborhood. And in the meantime, somebody may cut the grass but I'd still maybe compose a letter to say that we have had complaints with regard to the length of your grass. But yeah, I'm open for more discussions. With regard to some of these issues. I know you do run into these problems, and then you'll go away for a while, then all of a sudden you start coming back, as happened.
So I would be interested if our property maintenance could, I know that he gave us the presentation, but if he could maybe put that in writing with some examples of what the correspondence and in the order that he does that and what his timelines are. So that we can then discuss that as a board.
I would like to comment that recently I've gotten comments from some people that are thanking the effort that our administrator and ordinance enforcer are putting forth to work with someone who has complaints. So I'd like to say thank you.
Yeah. All right. So are we good?
So do we end this with that we're gonna have a committee and that we're gonna be putting people on it, or how does
I
this
think
end?
we need to have John Carrier put, his process in writing to show us, here's the complaint form, here's the first letter that gets sent out, then after, if that doesn't, here's after so many days, this is what's next being sent out. And then once we have that in front of us and we can see it in writing, then I think we can have a bigger discussion. But I also think that staff needs to be involved in that. I do think that, we could maybe highlight the FOIA part without, and thank you.
That's awesome.
And then I do think that we need to have, I guess I would be open to
Committee of the whole.
changes. We could do it as a committee of the whole and just have that one topic. And then discuss it as a board with the staff and and see. And I would like that, you know, sooner rather than later so that we don't continue to get,
Maybe before a
Complaints.
budget hearing or after.
our budget hearing is in 2 weeks and I would assume, I'd like to discuss it in October for sure.
So at the next step after that wouldn't be then going to a committee, would it? We'd be able to hash it
It'll
out then.
depend. If we can get it done as a board, then I think then that's a great thing.
Yep, can do a consensus.
But if we can't seem to, then, you know, but I think that we do need to have a written policy.
Sounds great.
Okay. Move on to number 12, Fire Department, discussion and possible action on the following items. 12.1, request to allow WRS retirement contributions for part-time EMTs and paramedics.
Good evening, Board. Thank you. I come before you tonight to rediscuss an issue that we have gone over before, and that was the value of allowing staff members to enter the WRS system. We've done some analysis and we've also reviewed the amount of call volume that we've recently encountered. And we find that reducing the amount of people who can enter the WRS system has created a little bit of a hardship in terms of getting staffing from our part-time staff. To speak to this a little bit more, today's the 16th of the month. To date so far, we're at 102 calls for the month of September, which is a significant increase in what we typically do. We normally see 4 to 5 runs on average. We're up to 6 runs per average with typical call time of 25 to 35 minutes from point of alarm to the point of returning that piece of equipment back into service. What seems to be the case here in our community is we'll get one call, which will piggyback onto 3 calls. We'll get one after the other after the other. And in a very short period of time, we expend all our resources, and it forces us to look to other communities for assistance. We try on a daily basis to manage 7 people per station, or for the 2 stations, which allows us to operate out of 2 different firehouses. Why is this significant? Well, once we start to fall below minimum standards on our staffing, perhaps because of limitations, one being the WRS not allowing people to exceed a certain amount of hours, it creates hardship. So based on some of the research and evaluation that we are doing, we have a group of people, approximately 6 people that are either EMTs or paramedics that are reaching their limits so that they do not enter the WRS. We would like to reevaluate that and allow our EMTs and paramedics to reach a call volume or a availability that may impact that and put them into the WRS system. Analyzing the numbers and the amount that it would cost us collectively versus trying to continue to increase our staff, we feel that it's cost effective to allow EMTs and paramedics to enter into the WRS based on their hourly times. EMT or an employee right now, once they reach 1,200 hours, is automatically entered into the WRS system. We're looking at ways of trying to make our staff work more effectively. We've had a lot of discussion recently about retention, about getting people to come to the fire department. We know that our wages are low, and we currently do have people that want to continue to work for us on a part-time basis, but unfortunately, because they're active frequently, they quickly reach those hourly limits. So we have staffing concerns. We'd like you to reevaluate the process of allowing EMT and paramedics to exceed the minimum hours in order to go into the WRS. The WRS is not our goal. The goal is to maintain apparatus and getting rigs to calls. We've had days where we're up to 12 runs in a day. Anybody who's aware of what's been going on in the community over the last months knows, but it's been an alarmingly tragic month so far with the amount of people that we've had to transport via Flight for Life, the amount of trauma that we've suffered, the amount of dramatic events that continue to happen. And, there's no way to really factor why that's occurring, but the fact is it is occurring. We have an obligation as a department to serve the needs of the community. And we do that through properly trained people and equipment and staffing. We're asking you to help us to do that by allowing to push the boundaries of the WRS.
So I just want to add to that a little bit. So I just want to say thank you to the board for talking to us about the WRS a few months back. It offered us an ability to have a very firm pause. We didn't allow anybody to enter into WRS for the last 4 months. We put a very firm hold on that. We held the line on no more than 100 hours per month. That's about it's 1,200 hours a year, which is $100 hours a month or 23 hours a week. And the reality is, if we're not going to allow any of the EMTs or paramedics to enter into WRS, we need a lot more of them. That's why we're having this problem. There's just not enough of them, and it's a nationwide shortage. So the easy way to keep people from entering WRS is to have a very wide pool of people to pull from. But when it comes to, as you just heard, there's 6 that we're pulling from on our part-time ranks, that they're all being asked to come in and fill in where we need them. And we don't have 30 to pull from. If we had 30, we wouldn't be in the situation of asking you today, please reconsider us allowing the EMTs and paramedics, not the firefighters. We have enough firefighters. We don't need them to enter into WRS right now. We don't have enough EMTs and paramedics. So that's where we're at. If you know people that want to work for us, we'll take them. So yeah, that's where we're at. So thank you. Are there any questions?
You would, if full-time or part-time, you should still be paying that 14% anyhow.
That's
So
correct.
whoever works it, you're still paying for that.
Well, with the part-timers, you wouldn't pay it if you didn't allow them to ever exceed 1,200. The
I know, I
part-timers
understand.
only get WRS once they've exceeded 1,200 hours in a rolling 12-month period. So as long as you permanently keep them under 1,200 hours, you never have to pay that.
But that loses our membership.
It loses your ability to fill your calls.
That's what I meant to say. But it doesn't matter. Whoever you're still gonna be paying that 14%, whoever working that.
Correct.
When they reach it.
Or once they've exceeded 1,200 hours or they're full-time. That's correct. So we are continuing to try to recruit additional staff. We are also continuing to train our own into EMTs and paramedics. We are trying to continue to fill our full-time positions. We do have 18 authorized full-time positions. We currently have 14 full-time firefighter paramedics, EMTs. We do not have, for those additional 4 spaces, I'm with the chief a lot now, trying to just understand the daily workings. We really are trying to hold those specifically for paramedics, if possible. But until we adjust our wages, it's going to be very difficult to fill those positions.
I make a motion to allow WRS retirement contributions for our part-time EMTs and paramedics. Second by Hopkins. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Great, motion carries. 12.2 Memorandum of Understanding for a future intergovernmental agreement regarding joint emergency medical services for Paddock Lake, Randall, Wheatland, Twin Lakes, and Salem Lakes, to be called the West Side Emergency Medical Services Collaborative, otherwise known as WEMS.
All right, thank you. So over the last 8 months, roughly, we have been working with Randall and Wheatland in particular. Randall and Wheatland approached Salem Lakes and asked, hey, we're interested in looking at other options for serving our EMS needs. Would you be interested? Months ago, we provided a proposal to Randall and Wheatland to help staff their EMS needs. Since that time, Randall, Wheatland, and Twin Lakes have all come to the table and said, you know what, we think that it might be beneficial to form a West Side collaborative, not necessarily a district, so to speak, in the formal sense, but more of an intergovernmental agreement or contract-based type service where we work collectively across 5 communities to provide better EMS service. Just like you heard in the last conversation on the WRS, everybody nationwide is struggling with getting enough EMTs and paramedics. So when we're all trying to fill our ranks and get enough people and we're all competing for the same pool, it makes it even more difficult to get enough to fill each of our own individual staffing needs. So if you work together as a collective, it'll be easier, not easy, but easier to be able to hopefully draw enough staff to fill the needs of the region instead of just each individual community. So over the last, like I said, about 8 months, we have worked with the communities you listed, which would be Randall, Wheatland, Paddock Lake, Salem Lakes, and Twin Lakes, to come up with this WEMS, West Side Emergency Medical Services Collaborative, to provide ambulance service 24/7 to all 5 communities. What you have before you this evening is a memorandum of understanding. It is simply a memorandum of understanding at this moment. And what we're hoping to do is every community sign the same document, review the same document, which you received in your portal. And the very last page, the back page, would be the memorandum of understanding. It isn't responsible for a government to spend money with legal fees to develop a contract or an IGA until all 5 entities decide that they do want to participate. So once all 5 entities sign this with their boards, just like you're being asked to do this evening, then we then take it to the contract phase and we ask Ramsey to help us write a contract. But I don't think it's responsible or prudent to do that prior to getting this signed. That then we know everybody is absolutely on board and moving forward. We have talked about this briefly in closed session in the past, where I got your direction that it was okay to continue the discussions. For this to go forward, every entity will have to come to the table with the equal sum of funds, so that it's publicly transparent. It's about $255,150 a year is what the cost is for each of the 5 communities to participate in this. And that will help to provide staffing to all 5 communities for 24/7 ambulance service out of 4 fire stations instead of just 1, 2, or 3, depending on the day and the time of day. Right now, we get ambulance service out of Station 1 24/7. We strive to get another ambulance out of Station 2. We are pretty close to 24/7. It depends on our staffing, but we are always getting them out of Station 1 and or 2, but not always both. Twin Lakes strives to have 24/7 service as well, but they are not always 24/7. They have 12-hour coverage. I think they said it was Sunday through Thursday, and then they strive for 24-hour coverage Friday through Sunday. So by working with us, they will then get to 24/7 coverage instead of just partial coverage throughout the week. Randall and Wheatland currently have no coverage other than through Twin Lakes. Through this collaborative, there would be another ambulance stationed in Randall. So you would go from 2 ambulances, if you put them all together right now, to 4. That is a significant increase in service to the entire region. I don't know what else I can answer, but that is what we've been working on. Al has been in every meeting as well as some of his staff, and Rita has attended a few, just to make sure she understood what was happening too, so she could help me to explain it to you as well as to the community. Are there any questions?
What are we doing about Brighton? Those little, don't we have another little one that we take up a portion of them? Do they have to sign this too?
So at the moment, we serve half of Brighton through a contract, and I will be working with Brighton as well to bring them on board. They would be considered a half share, not a full share, because we only serve half of Brighton, and Kansasville serves the other half. So if they were to come on board, it would be just over 100,000 in addition to their existing contract
That's a
with us.
66/30 agreement or something like that?
Their contract is up for renewal, so I'll be working with them. I don't know what they're going to say, if they're going to participate or not. Ideally, they would come on board as well, because it seems fair that if all these other entities are helping to bolster the regional EMS response, that hopefully they would be able to come on board as well.
And you think we're going to get enough money to fully fund this then without we having to dig more into our pockets?
So that's a challenging question to answer. Our staff are very underpaid, which we have talked about. And whether we do this or not, you will be asked to find a way to pay your firefighters and paramedics more. We have looked at the statewide survey, and the statewide survey shows that even locally, we are underpaid significantly. I don't know that I want to share those numbers right here, right now, but there needs to be a significant increase.
About a possibility of
regardless.
a mill rate for everybody, the same mill rate.
So I will say that, there's a lot of work we need to do on this. I don't have an exact answer for you right now, Billy. I wish I did. Yes.
Can you talk to how new equipment would be funded and what the revenues from the medical billing, how that would all be?
Sure. So for this EMS collaborative, all of the medical billing from every entity, all 5 communities, would go into one common pool. That one common pool would then be utilized to purchase all of the ambulances, medical supplies, all the things that fill the ambulances, the staff training, the uniforms, all of that. And so instead of Salem Lakes having to purchase 100% of the ambulances for ourselves, the collaborative buys them. So if there's currently in this group, there would be 6 ambulances. You would replace 1 ambulance annually for the entire group. So it would be coming out of the pool of funds. We estimate that there's going to be about a 770,000 annual income in medical billing. And that was using our previous paramedic billing service that we used to use. That doesn't include any of the new revenues that we're going to get because we've switched to a better biller with a lower rate. So that should offset a lot of our costs. It won't pay for all of the costs. In here, what I've also suggested is because we will still have to provide, since we're the largest entity, we'll still have to provide a bigger share. The 255 is just our additional buy-in to get additional service. If we had to put another ambulance on the road by ourselves, it would be over $1 million in staffing costs and equipment. So by sharing the cost with others, we don't have to do that by ourselves. We get to share it. But I did add into here, and the group seemed okay with it, because we are paying a larger share in addition to the 255. We would keep anything in it in excess of the 450,000 that we've annually brought in. We do anticipate that that's going to go up at least by a third, if not by double. It's going to be somewhere between 450 and $1 million that we're going to be bringing in because of better billing than we've done in the past. So we'll be able to keep those revenues to offset the larger share that we're bringing to the table. It's very complicated. It took 8 months of negotiations to get to where we are today. I've got a full financial model I'd be willing to show and share on how we've figured out the cost of the staffing. The cost of the staffing for this is $1.257 million. And then you split that across everybody to be able to staff the four fire stations in addition to what we're already doing. And that's that 255.
And as far as personnel, they would be interchangeable, right? Between the locations. So
Yes.
better response times,
That is correct.
more coverage.
That's correct. The plan would be to utilize all services from all agencies and their associated personnel based on their training and their availability. We would assist in managing the system so that there's clear coverage throughout the day and maintaining what the agreement is attempting to do. Each of the agencies have responders from varying levels, from firefighter level all the way through EMTA, advanced and paramedic level. And our intention is to utilize the best of all of those while maintaining the coverage of our own communities and providing blanket style coverage for the greater initiative.
So the medical directors are different for both Salem Lakes and Twin Lakes. Is that going to be an issue when this becomes a west side emergency management system?
I'll be honest with you, this is an ambitious project. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of nuts and bolts, so to speak. There is in fact 2 medical directors. There is a service plan that would have to be rewritten. There's a lot of analysis that has to go to see how best we can serve the total. It may require revisiting service plans and may be inquiring who's going to be the better provider as far as a medical director is concerned. Twin Lakes uses a different one than we do, as a matter of fact. But that's not to say that perhaps theirs is better than ours. We don't know. That has to be evaluated. I would like to think that the providers can give some input into this project so that how we can best serve everybody. There's a certain degree of value to whoever that provider is going to be. And so at some point in time, we're going to involve them in the discussion. But, you know, to be honest, there is a great deal that has to be worked out before this thing can go live.
And that's not gonna have an impact on where the patient may want to go.
That's correct. That's correct. In the majority of the cases, it's either a medical emergency need, where's the closest facility based on what the call is versus what does the patient want to do. If it's a circumstance where they're able to make a choice and it meets the needs of the patient, then we can go and allow them to go like we currently do.
You can do second calls out on west end of this.
Well, that's the interesting point about this. This whole process is based on second call problems that we all share. For example, we're on our 7th call today. Each of the communities suffers a similar circumstance. So if we're getting tapped through this agreement, other communities as part of it will come and serve our needs, just in the same way that we would end up perhaps traveling out to Twin Lakes in their case. This is a smoothed out, enhanced method of dealing with MAVIS type events.
The square miles that we're covering here is 80.11 square miles, and it is a population currently of 30,511. That sounds like a lot, but 80 square miles for 30,000 people. I think this is an excellent report. And when you mentioned the expected revenue, it's based on historical numbers. You're at currently, I think it was 775,000 last year, and you're projecting to 700,000. So that's something that just isn't picked out of the air. We have 37% of the population and 47% or 47% of the population and 37% of the square miles in the report. And it's well done. I really enjoyed it.
Staff has worked
For a
incredibly
motion to
hard.
Continue with your memorandum of understanding. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, and actually, when you add Brighton into it, we're about 100 square miles, and we are at
With Bright,
with Brighton at about 31,000. So 100 square miles and 31,000 residents. So I just grabbed the rest of those numbers. It's not in here because I have to have the same conversation with Brighton next. So yes, it was a lot of work to put this together, but we wanted to make sure when we brought it to you, it wasn't half baked, right? So this is fully thought through. Now, the implementation part is the hard part. The thinking through it, putting it on paper is the easy part. How to get it from here to reality, that's where your chief and his staff and all the other departments that are going to be working with us come in. I'm good at writing, but
well, certainly would make the motion to continue the memorandum of understanding for future intergovernmental agreement with Paddock Lake, Randall, Wheatland, Twin Lakes, and potentially Brighton for the Western Emergency Medical Service Collaborative.
I will second that. And I just want to say thank you because this took an incredible amount of teamwork, something that Salem Lakes has not generally been known for in the past. And so when I came on board, that was one of my objectives, is to work with other communities. So I just want to say thank you. And I want to thank all the other communities as well. And again, I was involved in some of those meetings, and it was a wonderful thing to see everybody at the table with a common goal of better service. When you call 911, you want an ambulance and you want qualified people. And it was nice to see everyone come together for the common good and keep egos out of it. So thank you very much.
I have a little bit more commentary. It's strictly just, I'm aware of this, but maybe not everybody in the public is. This is strictly for ambulance service, just to kind of bring it back. This is not making a combined fire commission or anything like that, correct? Just if we can clarify that.
this is just ambulance. At this moment, it is only ambulance. It's just the EMS side. Maybe in years down the road, we'll look at the fire piece too, but at this moment, both Randall, Wheatland and Twin Lakes have fire departments, and it's easier to get a firefighter than it is to get an EMT or an advanced EMT or a paramedic. So right now, the staffing need is kind of driving the fact that we all really need to band together on the ambulance side.
Thank
And
you.
the start date is projected at,
January 1, 2026. So it gives us a little over a year to try to figure out how to get the nuts and bolts to work.
any other questions or comments? All right. Jared? Can you talk in your mic, please?
Turn the mic on, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Gant?
Yes.
Mr. Faber?
Yes.
Mr. Polly?
Yes.
Mr. Barheit?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to the treasurer's office, discussion and possible action on the following. 13.1, approval of vouchers and disbursements for August 2024 in the amount of $1,460,535.26 as reviewed and presented.
Second.
Hopkins and Faber. Any questions or comments?
The disbursement journal was placed on the board portal for your review. We did receive the August tax settlement from the county, so the settlements to the other taxing jurisdictions were distributed last month, which is why the disbursements appear rather large.
Yeah. I do have a couple of comments.
And it's payouts after the second tax, real estate tax.
Yeah.
One time.
No.
On page 4, you have road ratings in the amount of $5,438.50. What exactly is that?
Betsy is not here. I'm watching my text to see if she tells me what that is. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm sorry. I apologize. We had a number of staff come down with the flu, and so we're doing our best.
Yeah. So the only ask that I have, and I'm not sure if it's possible, but some of the credit card charges, I really don't know what they're for because there's not enough information. If we can try to get, like it just says, there's a bunch of them, service from 7/14/24 to 8/13/24, station 2. For, it would be nice to know what that was for. So if there's any way to try to just get a little bit more, that would be great.
We can do that for next time, sure.
Yeah, I don't know how limited we are with our software, but that would be really helpful. And I think that was really all. Oh, I do. Wisconsin Central Railroad Rent, County Highway F and B. What is that?
I do know about that. So we have to pay rent anytime we have any infrastructure that goes underneath the railroad tracks.
Okay.
We pay rent to the railroad for the ability to cross their land.
Okay. And then the only other thing I saw, and I'm not sure if this is a double, was the Central States Pension Fund payment, 153 of 240 shows twice.
I believe that was because there was 2 months due it. One was maybe missed or they came due at the same time.
153 of 240.
Shannon mentioned something about that. I don't.
Yeah. So that was all I had for questions or comments on that. All right, so we have a first and a second. Are there any other? Anything? Okay. Everyone, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 13.2, approval of revenue and expenditure report.
Motion to approve.
Hopkins and Gant, any questions, comments?
Okay, so just back to the last Central States pension, it's a little delayed. It was split in half and paid out in 2 separate GLs. That's
Oh,
why there were
got it.
2 payments.
Okay.
So on 13.2, at the end of August, we are 2/3 or 66.6% through the year. As mentioned previously, the August tax settlement has been received. Tax settlements are recorded into the tax receivable GL account. This acts as a holding account. These funds are then distributed into the various tax revenue accounts through a journal entry that is drafted and then reviewed by the accounting firm Andrea and Orndorfer. They are currently working on the draft and it should be entered prior to the October report being presented. Therefore, the revenue should be more accurately presented during the next reporting period.
Thank you.
Oh, and then also expenditures are on track for this time of year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 13.3 Treasurer's Monthly Report.
There was a memo placed on the board portal reviewing the budget process and schedule. I want to remind the board that the first budget workshop is scheduled for Monday, September 30th from 5 to 8 p.m. I would probably plan for a little longer just in case we need it. It's a brand new budget process on how the budget's going to look and feel and how it's been put together. So
Okay,
5 to 8 is how long we have scheduled.
great. This doesn't require any action, correct?
None. No
Okay.
action.
All right. Number 14, Clerk's Office, discussion and possible action on the following. 14.1, approval of minutes for the August 19th, 2024 board meeting. I make a motion to approve. So Bucher and Hopkins. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 14.2, approval of applications filed with the clerk for an operator license with approval contingent on background check clearance, completion of beverage server class, and payment of necessary fees as presented.
I'll second.
Hopkins in favor. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 14.3, approval of direct sellers permit applications filed with the village clerk with approval contingent on background check clearance and payment of the necessary fees. Direct sellers, Active Environmental, Marlon Scott and Jordan Scott. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Hopkins and a second by Gant. Any questions or comments?
This is for pest service.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Motion carries. 14.4. I was pulling up my directions on what to do on this one. Okay. Hang on. All right. 14.4, appointment of Brian Hopkins to Board of Appeals as an alternate for a term expiring in 2026. Village president appoints, majority vote needed, so I make a recommendation to appoint Brian Hopkins to the Board of Appeals as an alternate. He had a stellar background check. So I need a second on that.
I'll second it.
Okay. So Bucher in favor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Bill abstains. So 6-0 to 1. Thanks, Brian. We'll make sure you get added on the website and get an email. Okay. 14.5, resolution 2024.09-106, a resolution by the Village of Salem Lakes Board of Trustees of the Village of Salem Lakes, Kenosha County, Wisconsin, in support of the Rock Lake Restoration Association for grant funding to update the lake protection and aquatic plant management plan for Rock Lake, Kenosha County, Wisconsin.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Faber and Hopkins, any discussion, questions? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. 14.6, general election update.
Hello, I just thought it'd be a good idea to give you an update as to how things are moving along in the department. We actually received our ballots today from Kenosha County, so we're actually a few days ahead of our normal schedule. We're going to send out absentee ballots on Thursday. And those can be returned. So we anticipate those to start coming back next week. In-person voting will take place here Tuesday, October 22nd through Friday, November 1st. Those are statutorily set during and we have set times during normal business hours. We're working on scheduling our poll workers for the upcoming election. We are still in need of a few more, so if you know anybody, send them my way. And we have an upcoming training at the end of the month. So, and then I did provide you guys with some numbers from the August election, although I wasn't here. I wanted to provide you with some of what the turnout was. It was a 24.9% turnout. At that point in time, we had just over 8,800 registered voters and just under 2,200 participants.
Can you clarify on what types of poll workers you need?
Poll workers will do everything from greeting when they come into the door to working the poll books. And they could also be handing out ballots. So we do like to put our more seasoned poll workers in the more places that you need more attention to detail. So we wouldn't take a new person and throw them in the fire right off the bat. So, but we do need a few more in a few of the locations.
And they don't need to be party affiliated, is that?
Nope. We've already appointed off of the lists that were provided and appointed by the board in November. So at this point in time, everybody, we're just using anybody who can give us a hand.
All right.
We will be using our 3 polling locations, the Wilmot Firehouse, the Silver Lake Firehouse, and our village hall.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, 14.7, resolution 2024.09-107. A resolution requesting exemption from Kenosha County Library tax for 2025 budget for the Village of Salem Lakes.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Faber and
Second.
Barheit. Any questions or comments?
My comment is I've never really liked this because they set the mill rate and you can't go below it. You're going to be in a library contribution on your taxes no matter what. It's either Kenosha or we have our community library. And my thinking has always been that I don't like the fact that they tell you the amount that you're going to get before you actually do your budget.
Yeah.
I've never liked that, but in any event, there isn't anything you can do about it. It's the way the lobbyists have put this together. So it's like 24 cents minimum per $1,000. We pay most in our location here. I think it's 400 and some thousand.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 14.8, resolution 2024.09-108, a resolution by the Village of Salem Lakes Board of Trustees providing board suggestions to clerk regarding absentee drop boxes in light of recent legal developments and guidance from WEC.
So Ramsey, what exactly is a resolution when in fact it's the village clerk's call whether to use drop boxes or not, correct?
That's correct. And a resolution is a much more informal action of a governing body as compared to passing an ordinance. This body does at times express its viewpoint or decision-making by resolution. What's critical here, though, is the content. And the content had to reflect the recent decision by the Scott Supreme Court to the effect that it is within the clerk's statutory authority. So I think that the resolution reflects that now, writing simply that it's guidance and crystallizing that it is within the clerk's statutorily prescribed duties.
I'll second that.
Okay, Hopkins in favor. Trustee Barheit,
Yes.
trustee Polly,
Yes.
trustee Gant, trustee Young, trustee Hopkins,
Yes.
Yes.
trustee Polly. I'm sorry, favor. And I'm a yes, motion
You
carries
do it.
unanimous, yes. 15, closed session. 15.1, convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85 sub 1. Not sure if there's something else. Deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session for the following purposes: fire and rescue department union contract negotiations. I make a motion to convene into closed session.
Second.
Buchanan will give it to Polly.
Yes, Polly.
Trustee Barheit,
Yes.
trustee Polly,
Yes.
trustee Faber,
Yes.
trustee Gant,
Yes.
trustee Hopkins.
Yes.
Trustee Young, you need to turn on your microphone, please.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes, we're in closed session. Hey, we had a motion by trustee Barheit and a second by trustee Polly to go into open session, and it was a unanimous vote. So we will do 15.2, reconvene into open session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85. Sub 2 for possible additional discussion and or action concerning any matter discussed in closed session. I make a motion to direct staff as discussed.
Second.
Second by Hopkins. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And I make a motion to adjourn.
Third.
Bucher and Gant. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right.